This is the Story of a Happy Marriage is a book that I had no intention of writing. I have a friend named Nikki Castle. Nikki Castle was my sister's babysitter when my sister was the vice president of Converse College and Nikki was a sophomore at Converse. And that's how they met. My family fell in love with Nikki. We kind of adopted her. When she got out of school, I sent her to the New York publishing program at Columbia. I got her a job at ICM with my agent. She worked there for 4 years, and then she was very sad and wanted to get out of New York. She came to Nashville, moved into the basement, and I said, you can work for me until you find a job. So she worked as my assistant for about 6 or 8 weeks, and she found in my closet this giant Tupperware box of clippings, because I had supported myself for years and years as a magazine writer, and the magazines get really heavy, and I always moved a lot. So every time I would publish something, I would rip out the pages of the magazine with my story, and I would throw it in this Tupperware bin. And Nikki, being a young person, said, totally unacceptable. It has to be digitalized. And while she was doing it, she started to read them. And she came to me and she said, this is what we're going to do while I'm your assistant. We're going to put together a book of essays, and you're going to publish a book of essays. So Nikki hands me a book of essays. I can't read it. It just makes my heart stop. One of my psychological barriers in life, and I have several of them, is I really can't read my own work. By the time I finish writing a novel, I have read it so many times. You know, you do the editing, you send it to your friends, they do their editing, you read it again, you send it to your editor, it goes to the copy editor, you read it for typos, you do page proofs and LastPass, and by the time I'm finished, I've read the book 15 times, and I never want to read any of my books again. Well, I feel the same way about my essays. So time goes on, and she gets her job, and she's not in my house anymore, and she's nagging me all the time. What about the essays? What about the essays? I just can't. I can't. I mean, I get sweaty, and my heart races every time I sit down and try to look at them. But because she nags me so relentlessly, I finally read the book of essays, and I think it's awful. And half of the essays she picked just seem like complete junk to me. So I immediately pull them out. But then I kind of get inspired about writing essays, because the ones that are good, I sort of really like. And right about this time, I was asked to write 2 very long essays, one for Audible. They wanted to do their first Audible original. So they wanted me to just write something really long, like 15,000 words, and record it for them. And then Byliner asked me to write a really long essay for them. When I wrote these 2 really long pieces, I started thinking about a book of essays, because these pieces I really liked. Also, it seemed to me that a book of essays should be like a shopping mall. You needed to have anchor stores. So, I had all the little stores. I had some really good essays that were small, but I didn't have the anchor stores. So now I had these 2 huge essays, and I'm kind of like, okay, I've got my Macy's, I've got my Saks. But again, every time I read the book, I take something out, I put something better in, I have a narrative arc, I'm feeling really good about it, but I feel so exposed. And people kept saying to me, well, why do you feel exposed? All of these pieces have been published. But what I realized is it would be as if you have a picture taken of yourself in a sleeveless dress, right? And the neck is high and the hem is low, but there are no sleeves. And someone takes your picture, not a problem. The next week you're at another party and your dress is short and you have long sleeves and a high neck, but you're showing a lot of leg. Somebody takes your picture. Next week you're at another party and you've got sleeves and the dress is long, but it's kind of low cut. The next week it's low in the back. And then somebody puts all those pictures together and you're naked. And that's the way I felt about this book of essays. Like, it was really okay, one piece at a time. And I publish in such wildly disparate places that I knew that nobody was reading all of my essays. But somehow when I put them next to each other and they sort of snuggled up and they started informing one another, I felt too exposed. So even though I started to think that it was really a good book and it had a narrative arc and there weren't rotten, weak essays in it, I just couldn't do it. There was at one point I wrote the name of every essay on a separate Post-it note, and I put them up on the kitchen door, and I kept rearranging them and moving them around, and Nikki came over, and it was kind of like, well, what if? What if we put this one here? What if we put that one there? That was actually a really big part of it, getting them in order. The fact is, the more I worked on the book and the better I got, the better the book got, the more I could really feel proud of it, the more I was okay with it. I don't ever want to publish a book that isn't better than my last book.